The morning sun of Kepler 442b cast long shadows through the windows of classroom 17. Jake Martinez stood at the front of the room, watching his students settle into their seats. The classroom looked like any other in the galaxy, except for one thing. His students were not human. A young Zephyrian named Crystal sat in the front row, her body made of living diamond that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. Behind her, a Vorthon cub called Fang scratched at his desk with claws that could cut through steel. 3 Helix juveniles clicked and buzzed to each other in their insect language, their compound eyes reflecting everything around them. Jake smiled at them all. He had been teaching on this neutral world for 3 years now. The Galactic Education Consortium had built this place as a safe zone where young aliens could learn about other species. No weapons were allowed, no wars could reach here. Ancient treaties protected this world from all conflicts. "Good morning, class," Jake said in the common galactic language. His voice was calm and friendly. "Today we will continue our study of human military history." The alien students perked up with interest. They loved these lessons. Humans were strange to them. Most species in the galaxy fought with natural weapons. The Vorthons had claws and fangs. The Helix had acid spit and armor shells. The Zephyrians could focus light into deadly beams. But humans seemed to have nothing special at all. They were soft and slow. They had no claws, no armor, no poison. Yet somehow they had won wars against species that should have crushed them easily. "Professor Martinez," Crystal asked, her voice like wind chimes, "why do humans always win their wars? You have no natural weapons." Jake chuckled and walked to the holographic display. Images of ancient human battles appeared in the air. Soldiers with simple metal swords fought against creatures with claws. Ships made of steel faced off against living bioships. "That's exactly why we win," Jake said. "We don't rely on what nature gave us. We make our own advantages." He pointed to an image of human soldiers hiding in a forest. "This is called guerrilla warfare. When you can't win a straight fight, you change the rules of the game." Fang raised a furry paw. "But that seems unfair. Where is the honor in hiding?" "Honor doesn't keep you alive," Jake replied simply. "Humans learned long ago that survival matters more than pride. We adapt, we improvise, we find ways to turn our weaknesses into strengths." The lesson continued for an hour. Jake explained how humans use tools, terrain, and timing to overcome stronger enemies. He talked about psychological warfare, where humans scared their enemies into making mistakes. He described how human armies could retreat from one battle to win the next. The alien students listened with wide eyes. Their own species fought in traditional ways. They met their enemies head-on with natural weapons and superior technology. The idea of fighting dirty, of using tricks and deception, was foreign to them. "Humans sound very dangerous," whispered one of the Helix students. Jake heard the comment and nodded. "We can be, but we choose not to be most of the time. That's what makes us different. We have the ability to be monsters, but we decide to be teachers instead." As the class ended, the students filed out, chattering excitedly about human tactics. Jake began cleaning up his materials, humming an old Earth song. He seemed completely relaxed like any ordinary teacher. But Jake Martinez was not ordinary at all. Far across the galaxy, in a dark chamber on the ship called Dread Whisper, a creature of shadow received its orders. The being called itself Vex, and it belonged to a species known as the Shadowkin. They were born assassins, evolved for the perfect kill. Vex read the contract details on a glowing screen. The target was a human male named Jake Martinez. Location: Kepler 442b Education Station. Mission: eliminate the target and send a message to all humans about their place in the galaxy. The Hegemony Council had decided that humans were becoming too influential. Their strange fighting methods were spreading to other species. Young aliens were learning human tactics and becoming unpredictable. This could not be allowed. Vex studied the target's file. Jake Martinez, age 35, human male. Profession: teacher of military history. Previous occupation: listed as various civilian jobs. No combat training noted. No dangerous abilities recorded. The Shadowkin assassin felt contempt. Humans were weak creatures who relied on tools and tricks because they had no real strength. This would be an easy kill. Shadowkin could bend light around their bodies to become invisible. They could move without making any sound. Their touch carried a neurotoxin that killed most species instantly. No one had ever survived a Shadowkin assassination attempt. Vex packed the necessary equipment and departed for Kepler 442b. The journey would take 3 days. The assassin spent the time studying the layout of the education station and planning the perfect approach. Meanwhile, Jake continued his normal routine. He taught his classes, graded assignments, and had dinner with other faculty members. To everyone around him, he seemed like a typical academic, soft-spoken, intelligent, but clearly not built for physical confrontation. The other human on the station was Lisa Chen, a young woman who worked as Jake's teaching assistant. She had arrived 6 months ago, fresh from Earth's university system. She helped with research and sometimes led study groups for struggling students. Lisa noticed things that others missed. She saw how Jake's eyes constantly scanned rooms when he entered them. She noticed that he always sat with his back to a wall. She observed that his clumsy movements sometimes positioned him perfectly to see all exits, but she said nothing. Everyone had secrets. On the second night of Vex's journey, Jake was working late in his office. He was preparing a lesson about human space battles when his computer chimed with an encrypted message. Jake read it quickly, then deleted it. The message had been short. Package inbound. Delivery expected in 36 hours. Jake leaned back in his chair and smiled. It had been almost 4 years since he had received such a message. He had hoped his old life was truly behind him, but it seemed that some people still remembered who he used to be. The next morning, Jake seemed even more relaxed than usual. His students noticed that he was humming more often and seemed genuinely happy about something. He taught with extra enthusiasm, describing human battle tactics with the passion of someone who truly loved his subject. Remember, he told his class as they prepared to leave, humans don't fight fair. We fight to win, and we always have a plan. Crystal tilted her diamond head. What if the plan doesn't work? Jake's smile widened. Then we make a new plan. Humans are very good at thinking on their feet. As his students left, Jake began preparing for tomorrow's lesson. It would be the most educational class he had ever taught. Though probably not in the way his students expected, Vex's ship was now only hours away from Kepler 442b. Soon, the galaxy would learn that humans were not as dangerous as they pretended to be. They were just clever animals who had gotten lucky a few times. The Shadowkin assassin had no idea how wrong that assumption was. Vex's ship landed at the public docking bay of Kepler 442b just after midnight. The education station was built like a small city, with residential areas, classrooms, and research facilities all connected by covered walkways. Security was light because this was supposed to be a peaceful place. The Shadowkin assassin activated its natural camouflage and slipped away from the landing pad. To any scanning equipment, Vex appeared to be nothing more than a heat shimmer in the air. The few security guards on duty never noticed the deadly predator walking past them. Vex had studied the station's layout during the journey. Jake Martinez lived in Faculty Housing Block C, Apartment 17. His classroom was in the main academic building, Room 17. The pattern amused the assassin. Humans seemed to like simple numbers. The infiltration took 6 hours. Vex moved through air vents, maintenance tunnels, and empty corridors. The assassin planted tiny surveillance devices in key locations and hacked into the station's computer system. By morning, Vex knew Jake's schedule, his habits, and his daily routine. The plan was simple. Jake always taught his first class at 9 in the morning. Vex would enter the classroom invisibly, approach from behind, and deliver a killing touch to the back of the neck. The neurotoxin would stop Jake's heart in seconds. Then Vex would leave a message for other humans to find. At 8:30, Vex positioned itself outside classroom 17. Through the door's window, the assassin could see Jake setting up his teaching materials. The human looked completely ordinary, average height, brown hair, wearing simple clothes. He moved like someone who had never been in a real fight. The alien students began arriving at 8:45. Vex watched them file into the room. Young creatures from a dozen different species, all here to learn about galactic cooperation. They had no idea they were about to witness a demonstration of galactic power. Jake greeted each student warmly as they entered. He seemed genuinely happy to see them. This confused Vex slightly. Most species showed some instinctive fear when death was near, but Jake showed no signs of awareness that a predator was hunting him. Lisa Chen arrived at 8:50, carrying a stack of papers and looking slightly rushed. She took her usual seat near the door and began organizing her notes. Vex studied her briefly. Another soft human, Clearly no threat to the mission. At exactly 9 o'clock, Jake began his lesson. Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to discuss something very important about human military doctrine. Vex slipped through the door as it closed behind the last student. The assassin moved along the wall, completely invisible and silent. None of the alien students noticed anything unusual. Can anyone tell me? Jake continued. What you think is the most dangerous thing about human soldiers? Crystal raised her hand. Their weapons? Humans make very advanced technology. Good guess, but no, Jake replied. He walked to the front of his desk and leaned against it casually. Anyone else? Fang spoke up next. Their numbers? I heard humans breed very quickly. Jake chuckled. Faster than some species, but that's not it either. He glanced around the room, and for just a moment his eyes seemed to linger on the empty space where Vex was standing. But that was impossible. Shadowkin camouflage had never been detected by human eyes. The most dangerous thing about human soldiers, Jake said slowly, is that they're always aware of their surroundings. They notice things that other species miss. Vex froze. Was the human somehow talking about the assassination attempt? No, that was paranoid thinking. The lesson topic was clearly planned in advance. Jake pushed off from his desk and walked toward the center of the room. Humans evolved as prey animals, you see. We had to develop very good senses to survive. We notice when something doesn't belong. The assassin began moving again, circling around to approach Jake from behind. 3 more steps would put Vex in perfect striking position. For example, Jake said conversationally, humans can sense changes in air pressure that most species ignore. We notice when the temperature drops slightly. We feel vibrations that other creatures can't detect. 2 steps away now. Vex raised one hand, fingers extended to deliver the killing touch. We also, Jake continued, still facing away from the assassin, have excellent peripheral vision, and we're very good at detecting movement even when something is trying to hide. 1 step away. Vex prepared to strike. But most importantly, Jake said, and his voice changed slightly, it became colder, more focused. Humans are very good at pretending we don't notice things until the perfect moment to act. Lisa Chen had been watching Jake carefully throughout the lesson. She saw the subtle changes in his posture, the way his muscles tensed slightly. She saw how his hand moved closer to what looked like an ordinary teaching stylus on his belt. More importantly, she felt the wrongness in the room. The temperature was 3 degrees cooler than normal. The air circulation sounded different, and there was a smell that didn't belong, something like ozone and metal. Lisa began quietly gathering her papers, preparing to evacuate the students if necessary. She caught Jake's eye and gave a tiny nod toward the rear corner of the room. Jake's expression didn't change, but she saw him acknowledge the signal. Vex was now directly behind Jake, close enough to touch. The assassin had never felt more confident. This human had no idea death was standing right behind him. So, Jake said to his class, if a Shadowkin assassin were to enter this room right now, thinking it was invisible and undetected, what do you think would happen? The alien students giggled, thinking this was a hypothetical question. They had been learning about various species' abilities, so discussions of Shadowkin camouflage seemed normal. The human would die? Suggested one of the Keelix students. That's what the Shadowkin would expect, Jake agreed. After all, they're perfect predators. Invisible, silent, deadly. They've never failed to kill a target. Vex felt a moment of unease. This was too much coincidence. But assassination contracts were secret. There was no way this human could know about the mission. But here's something interesting about humans, Jake continued. We have this saying, expect the unexpected. We plan for things that seem impossible. Jake's hand was now resting on his teaching stylus. To the students, it looked like a casual gesture. To someone with combat training, it was clearly preparation to draw a weapon. We also believe in another saying, Jake said. His voice was now completely calm, like someone discussing the weather. The best defense is a good offense. Vex raised its hand to strike. Neurotoxin glands in the assassin's fingertips prepared to release their deadly cargo. And finally, Jake said, we have one more rule that every human soldier learns. The assassin's hand moved toward Jake's neck. Never assume your enemy is as stupid as they look. Vex struck downward, fingers extended to deliver instant death. Jake was no longer there. The human had moved with impossible speed, spinning away from the attack and drawing his teaching stylus in one fluid motion. What emerged from the simple-looking case was definitely not a writing instrument. The plasma cutter ignited with a bright blue flame, casting new shadows across the classroom. Jake faced his attacker with a smile that was nothing like the friendly expression he had worn moments before. This smile was cold and sharp and promised terrible things. The alien students gasped as Vex's camouflage failed, revealing the Shadowkin assassin in full view. The creature was tall and thin, covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light. Its hands ended in claws and its eyes glowed with a sickly yellow light. "Class," Jake said pleasantly, as if he hadn't just avoided a killing blow. "I'd like you to meet a real Shadowkin assassin. Note the overconfidence, the predictable attack pattern, and the complete failure to research the target properly." Lisa was already moving, activating emergency protocols and beginning to evacuate the students. The young aliens stared in fascination and terror as their mild-mannered professor transformed into something far more dangerous than any of them had imagined. Vex stared at the human in shock. This was impossible. Humans were supposed to be weak, slow, and helpless. But Jake Martinez moved like a predator, thought like a tactician, and showed no fear at all. "Now then," Jake said, adjusting his grip on the plasma cutter, "shall we discuss the flaws in your mission planning? Or would you prefer a more practical demonstration of human combat techniques?" The hunter had become the hunted, and the real lesson was about to begin. Vex recovered from the shock quickly. Shadowkin were trained from birth to adapt to unexpected situations. The assassin had never failed a mission and did not intend to start now. "Impressive reflexes for a teacher," Vex hissed in the common language. The voice sounded like wind through dead leaves. "But you have only delayed your death by a few seconds." Jake circled slowly, keeping the plasma cutter between himself and the assassin. "Lisa, are the students clear?" "Almost," Lisa called back from the doorway. She was ushering the last few alien youngsters out of the classroom. 30 more seconds. Perfect," Jake said. He never took his eyes off Vex. "That gives us time for a proper introduction. I'm Jake Martinez, and I'm about to give you the most educational experience of your very short life." Vex struck without warning, moving faster than most creatures could follow. Claws that could cut through armor slashed toward Jake's throat. The assassin expected to end the fight immediately. Jake wasn't there when the claws arrived. The human had dropped low and rolled sideways, coming up in a combat crouch near his desk. He grabbed a metal ruler and threw it like a dart. The improvised weapon caught Vex in the shoulder, drawing a line of dark blood. "Lesson 1, Jake said calmly. "Humans use everything as a weapon." Vex snarled and charged again. This time the assassin feinted left, then struck right, trying to confuse the human. Jake saw through the deception and met the attack with his plasma cutter. The energy blade sliced through Vex's claws, cutting off 2 fingers. The Shadowkin screamed and stumbled backward. No one had ever hurt a Shadowkin assassin before. Their natural armor was supposed to be impenetrable. Lesson 2, Jake continued, advancing slowly. "Human technology is designed to kill things that shouldn't be killable." The alien students, now safely in the hallway, pressed against the windows to watch. Their professors had taught them about human warfare, but seeing it in person was completely different. Jake moved with deadly precision, but he also seemed to be enjoying himself. Vex activated a backup camouflage system, becoming partially invisible again. The assassin began moving in a circle, trying to confuse Jake's senses. Shadowkin fighting techniques relied on stealth and misdirection. Jake closed his eyes and tilted his head slightly, listening. "You know what's funny about invisibility?" he said to the empty air. "It doesn't stop you from making noise." He spun and fired the plasma cutter in a wide arc. The beam passed through what looked like empty space, but Vex materialized with a howl of pain. The energy had burned through the assassin's leg, leaving a cauterized wound. "Lesson 3, Jake said. "Humans hunt by sound as much as sight. We evolved to track wounded prey." Vex was beginning to understand that the intelligence reports had been catastrophically wrong. This human didn't fight like a civilized being. He fought like a savage predator that enjoyed the hunt. The assassin tried a different approach. Shadowkin had other weapons besides claws. Vex spat a stream of acid that could dissolve most metals. Jake dove behind his desk as the chemical spray ate through the air where he had been standing. "Interesting," Jake said from cover, "but you're thinking like an assassin, not a soldier." Jake grabbed his desk chair and threw it at Vex. The assassin easily dodged the clumsy projectile, then realized too late that it was a distraction. Jake had used the throne chair to mask his movement to a better position. The plasma cutter caught Vex across the chest, burning through armor scales and drawing another scream. The Shadowkin was now wounded in 3 places and beginning to feel something unfamiliar: fear. The difference between an assassin and a soldier, Jake explained while pressing his attack, is that assassins rely on surprise and superior ability. Soldiers rely on tactics and adaptability. Vex retreated toward the door, hoping to escape into the corridors where there would be more room to maneuver. But Jake anticipated this and moved to block the exit. The human seemed to know exactly what the assassin would do before Vex did it. "You studied my schedule," Jake said. "You learned my routines. You planned your approach based on what you thought I was." He smiled, that cold, dangerous smile again. "But you never bothered to find out who I really am." The fight moved around the classroom. Vex used every trick known to Shadowkin warriors. The assassin became invisible, attacked from unexpected angles, and used environmental hazards. Nothing worked. Jake countered every move with ease. More importantly, Jake seemed to be having fun. He talked throughout the fight, explaining his techniques to the alien students who watched in amazement. "See how he telegraphed his attacks?" Jake said while dodging another claw strike. "Most predator species rely on natural weapons, so they develop predictable patterns." Jake caught Vex's arm and used the assassin's own momentum to throw him across the room. The Shadowkin crashed into the holographic display, shattering the projection equipment. "Humans don't have natural weapons," Jake continued, "so we learn to fight dirty. We use leverage, momentum, and terrain to multiply our strength." Vex struggled to get up, breathing heavily. The assassin had never been in a fight that lasted this long. Shadowkin kills were supposed to be quick and clean. This human was turning the assassination into a prolonged battle, and Vex was losing. "You want to know the real secret of human warfare?" Jake asked. He wasn't even breathing hard. "We don't just fight to win. We fight to teach lessons." Jake kicked a piece of broken equipment toward Vex. The assassin dodged reflexively, which put him exactly where Jake wanted him. The plasma cutter swept down and cut through Vex's remaining good leg. The Shadowkin collapsed, unable to stand. For the first time in the species' history, one of their assassins had been defeated in single combat. "The lesson here," Jake said, standing over his fallen enemy, "is that humans are not the helpless prey you thought we were. We're apex predators who learned to think." Vex looked up at the human with something approaching awe. "What are you?" Jake's smile softened slightly, becoming more human and less terrifying. "I'm a retired Special Forces operative who became a teacher because I got tired of killing people." The assassin's eyes widened. Special Forces. No wonder the intelligence reports had been wrong. They had thought Jake was a civilian academic. Instead, he was a professional warrior who had chosen to become an educator. "You should have done better research," Jake said. "I've been teaching military history for 3 years because I lived most of it. I know these tactics because I invented some of them." Jake looked toward the windows where his students were watching. They stared back at him with a mixture of fear and fascination. Their friendly professor had just single-handedly defeated one of the galaxy's most feared predators. "But here's the most important lesson," Jake said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Humans could be monsters if we chose to be. The fact that we usually choose not to be is what makes us different from everyone else." Jake deactivated his plasma cutter and clipped it back to his belt. It looked like an ordinary teaching stylus again. Class dismissed. "We'll continue this discussion tomorrow." Vex lay on the floor, wounded but alive. The assassin realized that Jake could have killed him at any time during the fight. The human had chosen to disable rather than destroy. This was a kind of mercy that Shadowkin did not understand. "Why?" Vex whispered. "Why did you spare me?" Jake looked down at the defeated assassin. "Because dead enemies can't learn from their mistakes. And because the galaxy needs to understand something important about humanity." Security guards finally arrived, along with medical personnel and station administrators. They found Jake calmly grading papers while sitting next to an unconscious Shadowkin assassin. "Sorry about the mess," Jake said to the head of security. "We had an unscheduled practical demonstration. I'll file a report later." As the medics treated Vex's wounds, the assassin heard Jake talking quietly to Lisa. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the package was delivered and received. Mission status, educational objectives exceeded." Vex realized that this had all been planned. Jake had known about the assassination attempt and had turned it into a teaching moment. The human had used a deadly situation to demonstrate exactly why his species was so dangerous. The galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about humanity. The news of Vex's defeat spread through the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. By the time the sun set on Kepler 442b, every major government and military organization knew that a Shadowkin assassin had failed to kill a human teacher. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. On the Hegemony Council's flagship, emergency meetings convened to discuss what this meant. For 3,000 years, Shadowkin assassins had been the galaxy's ultimate weapon. No target had ever survived an encounter with one. The fact that a human had not only survived but had easily defeated the assassin changed everything. "Replay the security footage again," ordered Council Leader Therath, a massive creature with 4 arms and scales that shifted color with his emotions. Right now, those scales were a deep red that indicated serious concern. The holographic display showed the fight from multiple angles. Council members watched in silence as Jake Martinez dismantled their best assassin with casual efficiency. The human's movements were precise, economical, and absolutely lethal. More disturbing was the fact that he seemed to be enjoying himself throughout the encounter. "Analysis?" Thyreth demanded. Military advisor Krellin, a spider-like being with compound eyes, clicked nervously before speaking. "Our intelligence reports were completely wrong, Leader. This human is not a simple teacher. His combat skills suggest advanced military training, possibly special forces or similar elite units. How did we miss this?" Thyreth's scales shifted to orange, indicating anger. "Human record-keeping is deliberately obscure about military personnel," Krellin explained. "They seem to have extensive programs for integrating former soldiers into civilian roles. This Jake Martinez appears to be part of such a program." Another council member, a floating gas being called Vorthak, pulsed with worried colors. "If one teacher is actually a disguised warrior, how many others are there? How many human civilians are actually potential threats?" The question hung in the air like a poison cloud. The hegemony had dismissed humans as a minor species, barely worth attention. If they had been wrong about that assessment, the political implications were staggering. Meanwhile, on Kepler 442b, Jake continued his normal routine as if nothing unusual had happened. He taught his afternoon classes, attended faculty meetings, and had dinner with colleagues. The only difference was that his classroom now had a security detail, and his students looked at him with new respect. Lisa Chen found him in his office after evening classes, reviewing the damage reports from the morning's fight. "Earth Command wants a full debrief," she said, handing him an encrypted tablet. "They're very pleased with how things went." Jake read the message quickly. "They want me to do a lecture tour? Seriously? Think about it," Lisa said. "Every alien government is going to want to know how their perfect assassin got beaten by a human teacher. You could probably write your own ticket." Jake shook his head. "I didn't become a teacher to be famous. I did it because I wanted to help young people understand the galaxy better." "Well, mission accomplished," Lisa said with a grin. "Your students have certainly gained a new understanding of humans." The next morning, Jake's classroom was packed. Word had spread throughout the station, and alien students from other programs had requested permission to attend his lectures. Jake found himself teaching to an audience of nearly 100 young beings from dozens of different species. "Before we begin," Jake said, "I want to address what happened yesterday. Yes, I fought and defeated a Shadowkin assassin. No, this doesn't make me special among humans. Most of my species could have done the same thing given proper training and preparation." A murmur went through the crowd. The students had hoped Jake was uniquely gifted. The idea that most humans possess similar capabilities was both thrilling and terrifying. "The real lesson," Jake continued, "is not about fighting. It's about perception versus reality. The galaxy sees humans as weak because we don't have natural weapons or armor, but weakness and strength are not always what they appear to be." He activated a new holographic display showing various human achievements. Images of Earth's cities, space stations, and exploration vessels filled the air. Humans have been spacefaring for less than 300 years. In that time, we've established colonies on 47 worlds, built the largest trade network in our sector, and earned recognition as a full member species of the Galactic Consortium. Jake paused to let this information sink in. "We didn't do this by being weak. We did it by being adaptable, creative, and absolutely ruthless when necessary." The word ruthless sent a chill through the alien students. They were beginning to understand that humans might be far more dangerous than anyone had realized. But, Jake added, we're also capable of great kindness, cooperation, and mercy. The choice of which aspect to show is what makes us truly dangerous. Crystal raised her hand. Professor, why didn't you kill the assassin? You could have ended the fight much sooner. Jake smiled. Because killing him would have taught the wrong lesson. By defeating and sparing him, I demonstrated that humans have the capability for both violence and restraint. Dead enemies can't spread the word about what they've learned. As if summoned by the discussion, a security officer entered the classroom. Professor Martinez? The prisoner is asking to speak with you. Jake nodded. Class, I want you to work on the assignment I gave you yesterday. We'll continue this discussion when I return. The medical facility was heavily guarded now. Vex lay in a bioregeneration tank healing from the wounds Jake had inflicted. The Shadowkin's injuries were serious but not life-threatening, another demonstration of Jake's precise control during the fight. You wanted to see me? Jake asked, pulling up a chair beside the tank. Vex's voice was weak but clear. I have been thinking about what you said, about humans choosing to be teachers instead of monsters, and I do not understand this choice. My species believes that strength should be used to dominate others. Why do humans choose differently? Jake considered the question carefully. Because domination is easy, but cooperation is harder and more rewarding. A galaxy where everyone fears each other is a galaxy where nothing good can grow. You could have killed me, Vex said. You chose not to. This makes you either very wise or very foolish. Maybe both, Jake admitted. But I'd rather be foolishly kind than wisely cruel. Vex was quiet for a long moment. My people will want to know how you defeated me so easily. What should I tell them? Tell them the truth. That humans are not the primitive species they thought we were. That we've been studying warfare longer than most civilizations have existed. And that we prefer peace not because we're weak, but because we know exactly how much damage war can cause. They will not believe me. Jake smiled. Then invite them to send another assassin. I have plenty more lessons to teach. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication alert. Jake's tablet chimed with an incoming message marked with the highest priority codes. Professor Martinez, Jake read aloud. This is Admiral Chen of Earth Fleet Command. We have received formal requests from 17 different governments asking for information about human military capabilities. Please advise on how to proceed. Jake showed the message to Vex. It looks like our little demonstration has gotten the galaxy's attention. What will you do? The assassin asked. What I always do, Jake replied. Teach. The galaxy wants to understand humans better. Then I'll give them the most comprehensive education they've ever received. Jake stood to leave, then paused at the door. Vex, when you're healed, you're free to go. But if you ever want to learn about human culture instead of trying to kill humans, you're welcome in my classroom. The Shadowkin assassin watched the human teacher leave, feeling something that might have been respect. For the first time in his life, Vex began to wonder if there might be alternatives to violence. The galaxy was about to receive an education in human nature, whether it wanted one or not. 3 months after the incident, Jake's classroom had become the most famous learning space in the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of species made pilgrimages to Kepler 442b just to attend his lectures. The waiting list for his classes extended for 2 full academic years. The change had been gradual but profound. What started as curiosity about the human who defeated a Shadowkin assassin evolved into genuine interest in human culture, history, and philosophy. Jake found himself teaching not just military tactics but human art, literature, and social structures. The key to understanding humans, Jake told his expanded class of 200 students, is realizing that we're walking contradictions. We're capable of incredible violence and incredible kindness often at the same time. He activated a holographic display showing scenes from human history, images of wars and peace treaties, destruction and construction, conflict and cooperation filled the air above his head. We fought 2 world wars that nearly destroyed our planet. Then we used the same technologies to explore space and cure diseases. We created weapons that could end all life on Earth. Then we created laws to make sure those weapons would never be used. A young Keelix student raised a clawed hand. Professor, this seems inefficient. Why not simply choose to be peaceful from the beginning? Jake smiled. This question came up in every class now. Because peace without the capability for war is just helplessness. True peace comes from choosing not to fight when you could easily win. The lesson was interrupted by the arrival of an unexpected visitor. Vex entered the classroom, moving slowly but steadily. The Shadowkin's injuries had healed, leaving only faint scars as reminders of their encounter. The alien students gasped and shrank back instinctively. Even wounded and defeated, a Shadowkin assassin was still one of the galaxy's apex predators. "Vex," Jake said calmly, "I wondered when you'd show up. Class, I'd like you to meet my former opponent. He's here to provide a different perspective on today's lesson." Vex moved to the front of the classroom, keeping well away from the students. "I have come to tell you about failure," the assassin said in his wind-through-leaves voice, "and about learning." The students listened in fascination as Vex described the assassination attempt from his perspective. He explained how Shadowkin training focused on natural superiority and the certainty of success. He talked about the shock of encountering an enemy who seemed to know exactly what he would do before he did it. "I was taught that strength meant the ability to kill," Vex continued. "Professor Martinez showed me that true strength is the choice not to kill when you easily could." Jake nodded approvingly. Vex has been studying human philosophy for the past 3 months. He's become quite an expert on the concept of restraint. "It is a difficult concept for my people," Vex admitted. "We do not understand why anyone would limit their own power. But I begin to see the wisdom in it." A Vorthan student named Howl raised a furry paw. "But if humans are so powerful, why do they work with other species instead of conquering them?" This was the question Jake had been waiting for. Because conquest is temporary, but cooperation lasts forever. Every empire in galactic history has eventually fallen. But partnerships? Those can last for millennia. Jake brought up a new display showing trade routes, diplomatic agreements, and joint exploration missions. Humans could probably conquer most of this galaxy if we really wanted to. We have the technology, the tactics, and the ruthlessness to do it. But what would we gain? A bunch of angry subjects who hate us and rebel at every opportunity? Instead, Jake continued, we choose to work with other species. We share technology, establish trade relationships, and solve problems together. This approach takes longer, but it builds something permanent. Lisa Chen entered the classroom carrying a stack of messages. "Professor, I have updates from 17 different governments. They're all asking the same question, which is, they want to know how many humans like you are out there." Jake chuckled. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That there are about 12 billion humans in the galaxy, and most of them have some level of military training. Earth believes in citizen soldiers rather than professional armies." A collective gasp went through the alien students. The idea that most humans were potential warriors was staggering. "But," Lisa added, "I also told them that humans prefer building to fighting. Every human weapon has a civilian application. Every human soldier can also be a teacher, engineer, doctor, or farmer." Vex nodded slowly. "This is what I learned during my recovery. Humans do not separate warrior and civilian the way other species do. Every human is both." Jake walked to the center of the classroom. "That's the real lesson here. Humans aren't peaceful because we're weak. We're peaceful because we know exactly how destructive we can be, and we choose not to be destructive." Crystal, Jake's longest attending student, raised her hand. "Professor, what happens now? Will other species try to attack humans?" "Some might," Jake said honestly. "Fear makes people do stupid things. But I think most governments are smarter than that. They've seen what one human can do to their best assassin. They're not eager to find out what a billion humans could do to their entire civilization." As if to prove his point, another message arrived for Jake. This one was marked with the official seal of the Hegemony Council. Jake read it aloud. "Professor Martinez, the Hegemony Council formally withdraws all hostile actions against human targets and requests an immediate diplomatic meeting to establish peaceful relations. We would also like to invite you to address the full council about human military doctrine and philosophy." The classroom erupted in excited chatter. The most powerful military alliance in the galaxy was backing down from a conflict with humanity because of what they had learned from one teacher's actions. "You see," Jake said to his students, "sometimes the best way to win a war is to avoid fighting it entirely. The galaxy now understands that humans are not easy targets. This knowledge will prevent conflicts that could have cost millions of lives." As the class ended and students filed out, many of them stopped to thank Jake personally. Young aliens who had once seen humans as curiosities now viewed them with respect and genuine affection. Vex lingered after the others had left. Professor, I have a request. What's that? I would like to study here permanently. My people have cast me out for failing in my mission, but also for showing mercy to my target. I have nowhere else to go, Jake smiled warmly. Of course, but you'll have to start as a regular student. No special treatment just because you're a former assassin. I understand. I wish to learn about cooperation instead of domination, about choice instead of instinct. As Jake packed up his teaching materials, he reflected on how much had changed. 3 months ago, he had been a quiet professor trying to help young aliens understand human history. Now he was inadvertently responsible for reshaping galactic politics. Lisa approached his desk. Earth Command wants to know if you're planning to accept the Hegemony's invitation. Of course, Jake said. Though I'm going to bring some of my students with me. Let the Council see that humans and aliens can work together as equals. Even Vex? Jake looked at the former assassin who was carefully organizing his new textbooks. Especially Vex. He's living proof that anyone can choose to change. That evening, Jake stood on the observation deck of the education station, looking out at the stars. Ships from dozens of worlds were arriving daily, bringing students, diplomats, and curious observers who wanted to learn about humans. The galaxy was finally beginning to understand that humanity's greatest strength was not their capacity for violence, but their ability to choose when to use it and when to show mercy instead. Jake smiled as he watched a Shadowkin transport dock at the station. Vex's former colleagues were coming to study human philosophy rather than plan assassinations. The teacher in Jake was pleased by the irony. The galaxy had tried to eliminate a human educator and ended up learning the most important lesson in their history: that true power comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to know when not to. As Jake headed back to his quarters to prepare tomorrow's lessons, he hummed an old Earth song. He had students to teach, minds to expand, and a galaxy to educate about the benefits of choosing cooperation over conquest. The assassin had entered his classroom planning to end a life. Instead, he had started a revolution in thinking that would reshape interstellar relations for generations to come. Jake Martinez, retired Special Forces operative turned teacher, had given the galaxy exactly what it needed: a demonstration that humans were far more dangerous as friends than as enemies, and infinitely more valuable as partners than as corpses. The lesson was complete, but the learning had only just begun.